Hey guys, what's up? Jameer and Carey from Lifehack Bootcamp, and we want to talk today about the do's and don'ts for managers who want to create basically an environment of productivity, of relaxation, and everybody wants that, don't they?
Yeah, and high productivity with low stress,
Yeah.
right? Because we want to prevent this culture of high turnover that we're seeing more and more. And if employees aren't happy working for you, they have so many other options to just go somewhere else.
They can walk right out the door. So we got a question here that I'm just going to read. Jameer, Carey, how can I create a culture of low stress in my clinic so my new employees will stay and I don't have to deal with this high turnover that I've been getting? Now, this person in particular runs a clinic and literally had 3 of her employees turnover like in the same month. So It was just a stressful month. Everybody walked out the door. Guys, this is such a great question. I love when people are thinking this because there really is a win-win here, right? There's a win because you get to have employees who are working hard and working effectively, and they get to have an environment where they can actually go to work and know that they've done a really good job and go home and feel good about themselves. So the analogy, the central analogy I want you to think about here is basically like you're the engineer who's creating the roads in a city, right? If you engineer it well, if the roads are well built, if the rules are clear, if they're enforced and taught in the right way, then everybody's happy. In a weird way, people associate rules with unhappiness, but actually, the more clear that everybody is on the rules of the road, the fewer accidents there are and the more happy people are. And the opposite is true. If there's no rules of the road, if everything's built terribly, if everybody's going down the wrong way, there's going to be accidents all the time. People are going to be angry at each other all the time.
Okay, so our number one tip for you is to create roles that are clearly defined and achievable. So we see this all the time where job roles get overstuffed and filled with all this unnecessary stuff, and then employees just don't really know what they are supposed to be doing and what success looks like for them.
So the problem with that is then these roles are never going to have clear expectations, clear KPIs. It's always just going to be sort of what we call these Frankenstein roles, right? Small businesses always have these roles that are just like you rolled up a bunch of different tasks and you put them together. That person's never going to feel good about their job. They're never going to go home and feel like, man, I really moved the ball forward because their role doesn't have clarity just from day zero, and that's your job.
Now, in small businesses, roles have to be redefined a lot of the time because you're growing and stuff is changing. And that's completely fine to redefine roles. That is your job as a manager to do that. I would say what goes along with that too is just being able to let employees go that aren't serving the overall team, that are sort of dragging the average down. We actually had a client named Brandy who really embodied this and really put her team first above the individuals. And she was saying to me how when she fires correctly, I guess, you can tell immediately because the team morale improves, you see productivity go up, people sort of have a new pep in their step.
Fire correctly. I love that. That's amazing. Number 2, team, we really get to step up to a level as employers where we're giving our employees instructions that are super, super clear. I can't tell you how many people we've gone in and they've had an employee for 3 years and we talked to that employee and that employee was trained once, vaguely, not even well. It wasn't even a good training. They were trained once and then sent out to do the job and they just sort of had to make it up. And that job, the way they're doing it is not the way that the employer wants them to do it. But the employer never stepped up to the level of ownership to actually create a written set of instructions. So let me give you a standard that you can live by, that we live by. You want to give your employees instructions that are so clear that even somebody having a bad day of average intelligence can get it done 100% of the time.
Exactly. We see this all the time where first we talk to the manager and they say something like, well, this employee just constantly underperforms and they're never getting enough done and I just keep having to tell them what to do. And then we talk to that same employee and they say things like, well, I'm just really not entirely clear about what it is I'm supposed to be doing and what excellence looks like. So I just want to reiterate what Demir already said, which is the more granular and detailed your instructions can get. We use a combination of written instructions and recorded screencasts. Yep. These are the kind of resources your employees can go back to and reference again so that you're not constantly, spending your time giving people instructions.
We call these SOPs, Standard Operating Procedures, and they can exist as a video, they can exist as a written set of instructions, but when you take it out of your head and you put it down on video, you put it down on paper, and that's the best way to do it, now your employees can actually relax. Yes, it's not bad for them, it's actually good for them because they can relax and say, I know what perfect looks like. Now here's the important part. That means that if you didn't write it down right, or you didn't create the video right, that it's not their fault if they didn't get it right, that it's actually your fault. And this is a level that we don't want to step up to as managers, because we always want to reserve that right to step in and be like, you did it wrong. But when we put SOPs out to our employees and they get something wrong and we come back and we say, hey, that was wrong, they're able to point and say, hey, that's how you wrote it up in the SOP. That's how my job is supposed to be done. So then we collaborate, we fix the SOP, we move on. But that gives our employees such an important ability, which is the ability to be like, this is how to do this job right.
Yeah. Plus, this way you're not going to be afraid of turnover, right? Because if someone leaves, you've got all the written instructions for how to do that person's job. So training new employees also becomes that much easier.
Oh, cannot emphasize that enough. Please rewind the tape, play that back. I mean, reducing man risk and woman risk for your business by having everything that they do written down and videoed, so that if somebody can step in and basically be doing their job within 2 weeks, I mean, that is so crucial.
Number 3, set expectations in advance and set consequences in advance too. So this is a big problem we see in underperforming teams, is that when something does start to go wrong because expectations weren't set, then it's hard for managers to actually enforce and hold people accountable. So this is something really important to do before someone even starts their job.
Guys, all too often, we want, with a new employee, we want to welcome them in with open arms. We want to be Mr. Nice Guy. And so we give them a little bit too much slack. And then what happens later is they start taking that slack more and more because we didn't create clear boundaries. And now I seem like a real bad guy.
Exactly. So this can all be avoided if you are more stern and strict sort of upfront. And then, you can sort of transition later as trust has been developed into being sort of more of a nice person.
The truth is that they are not working for you for a friend. They've got friends, they've got family, you've got friends, you've got family. What you can give them is something that their friends and family can't get them, which is an incredibly peaceful, serene, successful work environment where they can do their job well and go home and pat themselves on the back.
So Demir and I actually have a written set of expectations for each role in our company, along with consequences. So it makes it really easy when we have to enforce something or we have to hold someone accountable. We can just go back and reference that document, and we don't even really seem like the bad people at that point.
Okay, number 4, your team has to know, not just you saying it, but know in their heart of hearts that they can rely on each other. Your team has to know they can rely on each other. And this is what happens when you have clearly defined roles and clear expectations, and they're actually enforced. The cars on the road don't get in accidents. So people know what to do, they know how to hand off the ball, and they know they can rely on each other. Here's what I mean by that. If I actually do my part of a job and then I pass it off to an employee, I need to know, because my reputation is on the line, that they're going to do their part too. And when they do, you have just an incredibly well-oiled machine.
Right, but don't get complacent, right? Because it's so easy to make justifications for poor performers and, oh, they're having a bad week, and oh, this drama happened in their personal life, or whatever it is. But here's the thing with poor performers is they throw a wrench into the rest of the team. So now the rest of your team is looking at you like, hey, why aren't you taking care of this problem? I am sick of covering for this person. It's not my job to do that. So you really have to be watchful and make sure that poor performers are either upgraded into better performers or they're let go.
Now here's what happens when everybody knows that they can trust in the quality of the work that the other person is doing, and they know what their roles are and what the expectations are. Then when somebody does have a bad day or a bad week, you don't even need to get involved, because they step in and they cover for each other. And that's what happens when you have trust and when the rules of the road have been established.
Okay, number 5, don't waste your team's time with annoying, pointless crap. Okay, we've all done that as managers, and I've also experienced it many times as an employee. This is so frustrating, okay? So you might be looking at your team like, you guys need to work harder, get more stuff done. They're looking at you like, well then why are you running around, interrupting me all the time, tapping me on the shoulder? I can never find you in your office when I need you. You are literally wasting your team's time, and you don't even know it.
Guys, as managers, we have to admit this, and I'm raising my hand high as the first person who admits it.
Yep.
We can sometimes substitute productivity for busyness. And we're out there and we're moving around, and because we don't have a clear sense of where a project is, we're checking in with each person. Well, guess what? Every time we check in with them, there's an opportunity for them to get distracted, for them to misunderstand the original instructions. And so us going over there and being busy is often creating more work and muddying the waters in terms of communication.
Yes, so stop micromanaging, assign tasks, get out of your team's way, and if you do find like you need to micromanage, then that might be a symptom of a bigger problem, which is probably that you don't have clear enough expectations and instructions for how to get the job done.
And finally, gang, if there's one thing that you need to do as a manager every single week to make sure that you've got a peaceful and productive work environment, it's to make sure that every person knows their number one priority for the week, not priorities. I can't tell you how many times people say, yeah, of course I've got all of my employees know their priorities. I'm like, wait a minute, priorities? And I see these giant lists that no human being could ever get done. What that does to the employee is it creates a sense of unending stress because they're never completing those priorities at the end of the week. They're just rolling them over and rolling them over, and it erodes your sense of inner peace and successfulness, right? Because you want to be able to come home at the end of the week, no matter how hard the week was, and you want to say, I did the most important thing to get done this week. And it can only come from you as the manager. Only you can tell them, hey, if you get nothing else done, this is the thing that has to get done to move the ball forward this week.
Over communicate this. If you think that your employee knows what their number one priority is, I guarantee you they probably don't. So just over communicate it. Communicate it again. Constantly reiterate it. If it changes, let them know immediately, right? I never want to hear like they're all top priorities. I hear this so often from employees at companies, and they get so frustrated because they say, well, my manager says they're all important. I have to do all of them. You need to let them know what is the number one thing, what is the number two thing, and so on.
And let me just jump in here because a lot of people say, well, it's Demir, Carey, you cannot tell me that my employees can only get one thing done a week. That's not what we're saying. To have a number one priority and say, this is the most important thing is not to say that you're not doing anything else with their week. There's a lot of shallow work out there. Emails have to get answers, calls have to get answered, there's meetings. But how many weeks have you had where you or your employees have done all the shallow work and they didn't get that one small thing done? Maybe it only took 1 hour to get that deep work thing done. And yet somehow in the crush of all the shallow work, that 1 hour, that deep work item didn't get done. So the answer is simple. Make it clear what that one thing is, that no matter what, they have to get that done, and then they will fit the rest of the work into the cracks around that thing.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that. We're going to be doing a part 2 on the same topic, so keep an eye out for that video, and let us know in the comments, what did you think? What tricks do you use to keep your office both low stress and high productivity? We'll see you in the comments.